Hello and welcome to Gardening at 58 North. So in this video I'd like to introduce you to a new plant of mine. So this is my Strelitzia, otherwise known as a bird of paradise plant. You can see here there's a picture and this is what the flowers look like. You might have seen the flowers previously. It's quite a common plant in tropical regions. It's a very popular garden plant in tropical countries because the flowers are quite stunning. And the flowers last for quite a long time and they tend to flower almost year round in the tropics. But as a houseplant, this is quite a bit more unusual. You do often have them sold as houseplants in garden centres, but unless you have a conservatory or you've got somewhere that you've really got space to let it grow to its full size, you're not likely to get the flowers to actually come on the plants. However, it would make a good houseplant as a foliage houseplant because these leaves get really large and they are quite nice, almost like a banana tree. You get nice big leaves. Now the reason this does better in a conservatory is that you can get up to 2 meters tall, so about just over 6 foot. So it is a tall plant. You do need a lot of space to get it to its full size and to have it to flower. Also, for it to flower, it needs to be a big plant. Because it's a slow growing plant, it can take a number of years. So this one, for example, I'm not expecting flowers on this for probably about 2 or 3 years until it gets to its full size. Then I can start expecting flowers on it. So it's going to be a bit of a wait, but it should be well worth the wait because once the flowers come, they should flower for most of the year. It probably won't flower in winter because it's too dark here in Scotland, but it should flower for most of the spring and summer. And the flowers are also long lasting as well. So even if only one flower comes up every few months, that should last a couple of months. So it should last for quite a while. Now the foliage is a bit damaged. When I first got this, it was covered in thrips. I've now treated that and the thrips have gone. I've just given it plenty of sponge baths with soapy water. That's cleared up most of the thrips. And it's desperately needing repotting though. Often when you get houseplants like this, they come in nice decorative pots, but it's really not suitable at all. So the problem with this one is there's just absolutely no airflow getting to the roots. So it's first of all placed inside a decorative pot, which is sealed with plastic. So there's no airflow in that and it's quite congested. It's got this bubble wrap around it to protect it. But that again, it's just going to congest it and it's going to make it struggle. And then again, wrapped in plastic, that's not letting much air in. You can see the condensation and it's just going to struggle a bit like that. Also, real risk of overwatering. If you give it too much water, the water's going to sit in between all these layers of plastic and the compost will stay wet and it's going to start going rotten. So I need to put it in a new pot. It's definitely pot bound. You can see there's big roots coming out at the bottom. I will unfortunately have to cut them off because there's no way of pulling those roots out without damaging them. So the first thing I'm going to do is take off this decorative plastic. You often get this in houseplants and they basically put it on the houseplants just as a form of protection when they're being transported. You can see it's in quite a moisture retentive compost. It's not too fussy when it comes to compost, the Strelitzia. So what I'm going to be planting it in is a loam-based compost. It tends to prefer growing in a loam-based compost, but it's generally not too fussy, so you don't have to worry too much. The only thing I would worry about is in winter time, I'll need to keep this quite dry as it will go dormant, and I don't want the roots to rot off, so I need to make sure it's a little bit free draining. So the mix I'm using is mostly a loam-based compost mix, but with a little bit of perlite just to make sure it doesn't get too saturated with water. So when it comes to these big tuberous roots, I'm going to have to cut these off. So I'm just going to use my secateurs and cut them off there. If I rip them off, there's more chance of infection. So we can see there it's got lots of big fat roots at the bottom, not much at all at the top, generally quite sparse up there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to peel back some of this compost. I have a feeling that actually this has been planted a bit too deep in the soil and it's kind of buried some of the stem. You can see some of the stem there is a little bit buried. So I'm going to remove this top layer of compost. I'm just going to put it in the mixer because it hasn't actually grown in this compost at all, so it's probably going to be still quite full of feed. Quite often when they come in from the nursery, plants can have incorrect levels of compost around their stems, sometimes too much, sometimes too little. In this case it's too much, so that's better there. With this Strelitzia, I can't pull these roots apart because these are really big, quite fragile roots. If I pull them apart too much, they're just going to snap, and that's a big tuberous part of the plant, holding a lot of energy and nutrients. So I don't want to break that off, otherwise it will stunt the growth severely. So I'm just going to have to leave them there, tease them out a little bit, but there's not much I can do, otherwise they will snap. I'm just going to find the right position, the right height, and get that planted in there. So I'm just going to shake up the pot to make sure the compost is loosely rattled around the roots, and just give it a gentle pushing down. I don't want to push down too hard though, because I don't want to compact the soil, otherwise it will be there won't be much airflow for the roots and the roots will struggle to grow through. That looks about the right height now. That's just about the same height as where I peeled off the compost when it was in the pot, its original pot. So that's the Strelitzia potted up into its new pot. It's probably got about 3 times as much space. I think the previous pot was a 1 litre, this is a 3 litre pot. I will have to pot this up several times until it gets to its full size. As it is such a big plant, eventually it will need a really large pot. I'll probably have to end up having it in a 30 litre pot. So this is a 3 litre now. The next stage will probably be 10. That will probably be in a year's time. They are quite slow growing. But I reckon if with the sunny, warm conservatory I've got here, I should be able to grow them probably a decent enough speed that I can get this to be repotted once a year. So I'll give you guys an update. It's probably going to be about almost a year's time though. I think it might be maybe early next summer. It's going to be quite slow growing, this plant, as I say. There's not much to show, especially as it's not flowering at the moment. So I'll just keep this well watered, give it a dormant period over winter, where it's going to be a bit colder in this conservatory. I won't water it much. I'll just have it kind of dormant, sitting there, not growing much, and then it should come into growth in spring, and I'll be able to give you guys an update when we put on some good fresh growth. What will happen is this will put on bigger and bigger leaves. It grows a little bit like a banana, in that it has a stem formed of leaves, but the stem doesn't ever become like a trunk. It stays quite low. What will happen is these new leaves, they will get longer and longer stalks. So you can see this one here, for example, has quite a long stalk. The newer leaves will have longer and longer stalks, and the leaf section at the end will be bigger as well. The main stem bit at the bottom here, made out of the old leaves, will probably only get a little bit higher, maybe 2 or 3 times the height. What will happen is we get lots of long leaf stems coming up like this, and we'll get bigger and bigger leaves. So it'll be good to see that when it gets bigger. That's all for this video. I'll give you guys an update sometime next summer.